I stared at my phone screen in disbelief as another wedding guest texted they wouldn't be coming. That made 17 cancellations in 2 hours. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, each one more devastating than the last. My parents had done the unthinkable. After a lifetime of treating me like I was invisible while showering my sister with attention, they were now destroying the most important day of my life. All because I chose my grandparents to walk me down the aisle instead of them. 3 months earlier, I never imagined my wedding planning would become a battlefield. My name is Terrence, and at 28 years old, I thought I had finally made peace with my family's dynamics. I was wrong. Growing up, I lived in the shadow of my sister Amanda. She was 2 years younger than me, but you would never know it from how our parents treated us. While I played Little League baseball every Saturday morning, Amanda had dance recitals that always seemed to happen at the same time. Guess which events my parents attended? I spent countless Saturday afternoons walking home from the baseball diamond alone, grass stains on my uniform, and disappointment in my chest while my parents cheered Amanda's pirouettes across town. Birthday celebrations painted an even starker picture. Amanda's parties were elaborate affairs with rented bouncy houses, magicians, and guest lists that filled our entire backyard. My mother, Jennifer, would spend weeks planning every detail, from themed decorations to custom birthday cakes shaped like Amanda's favorite cartoon characters. My birthdays, on the other hand, were quiet family dinners at Olive Garden, where my father Robert would awkwardly sing Happy Birthday while checking his watch. The inequality followed us into adulthood. When college acceptance letters arrived, Amanda received a full ride to State University, complete with spending money and a new car. My parents celebrated her academic achievements with champagne and family photos. Meanwhile, I worked 3 part-time jobs to afford community college, sleeping 4 hours a night and surviving on instant ramen. When I finally transferred to finish my engineering degree, I paid every penny myself, while watching Amanda graduate debt-free with a marketing degree she barely used. Christmas mornings were perhaps the most painful reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Amanda's side of the tree overflowed with wrapped packages of different shapes and sizes, creating a colorful mountain that took her an hour to open. My presents fit neatly in a single gift bag. While she unwrapped the latest electronics designer clothes and expensive jewelry, I received practical gifts like socks, a toaster, or a discount store tool set. Despite these patterns, I never gave up hope that things might change. I focused on building a career as a mechanical engineer, finding genuine satisfaction in solving complex problems and designing systems that actually worked. I bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, saved money responsibly, and tried to maintain relationships with my family even when they felt one-sided. Everything shifted when Amanda announced her engagement to Brandon, a corporate lawyer from one of the wealthiest families in our county. The news sent my parents into a frenzy of excitement that I had never witnessed before. Within hours of Amanda's announcement, my mother was already researching wedding venues, florists, and caterers. She created spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, and detailed timelines that would make a military operation look casual. 2 weeks later, I shared my own engagement news. Caroline, an elementary school teacher with the kindest heart I had ever encountered, had said yes to my proposal during a quiet sunset picnic at the lake, where we had our first date. Her acceptance meant everything to me, and I was excited to share our happiness with my family. The reception of our news was lukewarm at best. My parents congratulated us, politely asked a few basic questions about our plans, and then immediately returned to discussing Amanda's upcoming nuptials. Caroline squeezed my hand under the dinner table as we listened to my mother debate the merits of spring versus summer wedding dates for Amanda, while completely ignoring the fact that we had just announced our own engagement. The breaking point came during a family dinner 3 weeks after our engagement. My parents had invited us over to discuss wedding plans, and I foolishly assumed they meant our wedding plans. Instead, we spent 2 hours reviewing Amanda's guest list, discussing her color scheme, and debating between 3 different reception venues. Carolyn asked polite questions and tried to contribute to the conversation, but it became increasingly clear that our wedding was not part of the discussion. As we prepared to leave that evening, I overheard my mother talking to my father in the kitchen. They thought we were already in the car, but I had returned to retrieve Caroline's forgotten purse. My mother's words cut through me like a blade. "We should probably keep Amanda's bridal party small and intimate," she said, washing dishes with unusual vigor. "Just her closest friends from college, and maybe her cousin Sarah. We don't need to worry about including Terrence in anything significant since it's not his day." My father's response was equally dismissive. "Right, plus Brandon's family is paying for most of it anyway. We should focus on making sure Amanda looks perfect for their crowd." Standing in their hallway holding Caroline's purse and listening to my parents dismiss my existence yet again, something inside me finally broke. I realized that no matter what I achieved, no matter how hard I tried, I would never be more than an afterthought in their lives. Caroline found me standing there with tears in my eyes, and without asking questions, she guided me out of the house and into our car. During the silent drive home, I made a decision that would change everything. If my parents could not see my worth, I would surround myself with people who could. And I knew exactly who those people were. The following weekend, Carolyn and I drove 30 minutes to visit my grandparents, Harold and Dorothy. Their small ranch house sat on 2 acres of meticulously maintained land, complete with a vegetable garden, a woodworking shop, and a front porch swing where they spent most summer evenings. Harold and Dorothy had always been different. When my parents missed my baseball games, my grandfather was in the stands cheering louder than any parent there. When I struggled with calculus in high school, my grandmother spent entire afternoons at their kitchen table patiently explaining mathematical concepts until they finally clicked. When I needed tools for my first apartment, Harold spent weeks teaching me woodworking in his shop so I could build my own furniture instead of buying cheap alternatives. They treated Amanda and me with equal love and attention, never showing favoritism or making either of us feel less important. During holidays, our presents were always thoughtful and equitable. During family gatherings, they asked genuine questions about our lives and remembered the details from previous conversations. Most importantly, they celebrated our achievements with authentic pride and supported us through our failures with unwavering encouragement. Caroline had met them several times and immediately understood why they held such a special place in my heart. She watched Harold teach me advanced woodworking techniques, while Dorothy shared stories about their 52-year marriage. She saw how they remembered her favorite tea asked about her students at school, and treated her like a beloved granddaughter from the moment I brought her home. As we sat on their front porch that Saturday afternoon, I found the courage to share what I had been thinking about all week. "Grandpa, Grandma, I have something important to ask you both." Harold set down his coffee cup and leaned forward with interest. Dorothy reached over and squeezed my hand encouragingly. "Caroline and I are planning our wedding, and I've been thinking about the ceremony. Traditionally, the father walks the bride down the aisle, but I've been wondering." I took a deep breath and looked at both of them. "Would you both walk me down the aisle together?" The silence that followed was not empty, but full of emotion. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears, and Harold's weathered hand covered mine. "Terrence, honey, are you sure about this?" Dorothy asked gently. "What about your parents? Won't they be hurt?" I explained everything that had happened over the past few weeks. I told them about the family dinner, the overheard conversation, and the years of feeling invisible in my own family. Carolyn added her own observations about the patterns she had noticed during our family visits. Harold listened quietly, his expression growing more serious as I shared details about my childhood experiences. When I finished speaking, he was quiet for several long minutes. "Son, your grandmother and I would be honored beyond words to walk you down that aisle," he finally said. "But we want to make sure you understand that this decision might create conflict in your family." "I know," I replied, "but I'm 28 years old, and I'm tired of waiting for my parents to see me as something more than Amanda's older brother. You two have been the steady, loving presence in my life that every child deserves. You've earned the right to be part of this special moment." Dorothy wiped tears from her cheeks and stood up to hug both Caroline and me. "Then we will walk you down that aisle with pride and joy." The next step was informing my parents. I spent several days planning what to say, how to explain my decision, and how to minimize the inevitable drama. Carolyn helped me practice different approaches, and we both hoped that my parents might surprise us with understanding and support. I called my mother on Wednesday evening and asked if Caroline and I could come for dinner on Friday to discuss our wedding plans. She agreed enthusiastically, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe they were finally ready to show interest in our celebration. Friday evening arrived with unseasonably warm weather for October. Caroline wore a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and I chose khakis and a button-down shirt that I hoped struck the right balance between casual and respectful. We brought flowers for my mother and a bottle of wine for my father, small gestures that we hoped would set a positive tone for our conversation. Dinner conversation was pleasant but superficial. My parents asked about Caroline's teaching job and my engineering projects. They shared updates about Amanda's wedding planning and her engagement pictures. The atmosphere felt normal until I brought up the reason for our visit. "Mom, Dad, Caroline, and I have been planning our ceremony, and we want to share some of our decisions with you." I began carefully. "Oh, wonderful," my mother said, setting down her fork. "We've been wondering when you would start including us in the planning process." "We've decided to ask Grandpa Harold and Grandma Dorothy to walk me down the aisle," I said as gently as possible. The silence that followed was deafening. My father stopped chewing his food completely. My mother's face shifted through several expressions before settling on something between confusion and anger. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" my father asked. "I asked my grandparents to walk me down the aisle during the ceremony," I repeated. "That's not how weddings work, Terrence," my mother said sharply. "Parents walk their children down the aisle. It's tradition." Caroline reached for my hand under the table as I tried to explain our reasoning. "I understand that it's traditional, but Caroline and I want our wedding to reflect the relationships that have meant the most to us. Grandpa and Grandma have always been there for me, and this feels like the right way to honor that." "Honor that?" My father's voice was rising. "What about honoring us? We're your parents." "I know you're my parents," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But being a parent involves more than just biology. It involves showing up, being present, and making your child feel valued." My mother's face turned red. "Are you saying we haven't been good parents after everything we've done for you?" The conversation spiraled downhill from there. My parents took turns listing everything they believed they had done for me, most of which were basic parental obligations that they had fulfilled with minimal effort. They accused me of being ungrateful, selfish, and deliberately hurtful. Caroline tried to mediate, suggesting that perhaps we could find a compromise that honored everyone's feelings. My parents dismissed her attempts immediately. The evening ended with my father demanding that I reconsider my decision, and my mother threatening to refuse to attend the wedding if I went through with what she called this ridiculous plan. We left their house in heavy silence, both emotionally drained by the confrontation. As we drove home, my phone buzzed with a text message from Amanda. "Heard about your wedding drama. Really, Terrence. You're going to embarrass the whole family because you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Grow up and apologize to Mom and Dad before you ruin everything." I showed Caroline the message, and she shook her head in disbelief. "Your sister has some nerve talking about growing up when she's never faced a consequence in her entire life. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that my decision to honor my grandparents had exposed something much deeper than wedding planning disagreements. It had revealed the fundamental truth about my place in my family, and my parents' reaction confirmed everything I had suspected about their priorities. The next morning brought another text, this time from my father. "Your mother and I have discussed it. If you insist on going through with this disrespectful plan, we will not be attending your wedding." I stared at the message for a long time before showing it to Carolyn. She wrapped her arms around me and held me while I processed the reality that my own parents were willing to miss my wedding over a decision that honored the people who had shown me unconditional love my entire life. "Then we'll have a beautiful wedding without them," she whispered into my hair. "And it will be perfect because it will be filled with people who actually love and support us." I knew she was right, but I had no idea how far my parents were willing to go to punish me for choosing love over obligation. 2 weeks before our wedding date, my mother called and asked to meet for coffee. Her tone was different from our previous conversations, calmer and more conciliatory. She suggested that perhaps we had all overreacted, and that it might be possible to find a solution that worked for everyone. Hope flickered in my chest as I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. Maybe the time apart had given her perspective. Maybe she finally understood how important this was to me. Maybe we could salvage our relationship and move forward as a family. Caroline encouraged me to be open but cautious. "Listen to what she has to say, but don't compromise on the things that matter most to you," she advised. "Your grandparents have earned this honor." The coffee meeting started promisingly. My mother apologized for her initial reaction and acknowledged that she had been thinking primarily about traditions and appearances rather than my feelings. She said she had spent time reflecting on my childhood and recognized that perhaps she and my father had not always been as attentive as they should have been. "I want to support your wedding, Terrence," she said, stirring her latte slowly. "But I also think there might be ways to honor your grandparents while still respecting your father's and my role in your life." She proposed a series of compromises that initially sounded reasonable. What if my parents walked me partway down the aisle, and then my grandparents took over for the final steps? What if we included a special moment in the ceremony where my grandparents were recognized for their influence in my life? What if my parents were given prominent speaking roles during the reception? As she continued talking, however, her compromises became increasingly demanding. She wanted approval rights over our guest seating arrangements. She wanted to review our vendor contracts. She wanted equal speaking time with my grandparents during the reception toasts. Most importantly, she wanted written assurance that any future family events would follow more traditional protocols. "I appreciate that you want to be involved," I said carefully, "but Caroline and I have already made our decisions about the ceremony and reception. We are happy to include you in meaningful ways that don't conflict with our plans." My mother's demeanor shifted subtly. "You're not really willing to compromise, are you? You're just going through the motions of listening to me." "I am listening," I insisted, "but compromise means both sides giving something up. What you're describing sounds more like you wanting control over our wedding." The meeting ended with polite but strained goodbyes. My mother said she would discuss our conversation with my father, and we agreed to talk again in a few days. I left the cafe feeling uneasy, but hoping that we were moving in a positive direction. 3 days later, our wedding guests started canceling. The first cancellation came from my Aunt Susan, my father's sister, who had seemed excited about the wedding when we sent invitations. Her text message was brief. "Sorry we won't be able to make it to the wedding. Family conflict. Hope you understand." Then my cousin David canceled, followed by my Uncle Mark and his wife. By the end of the first day, 6 family members had withdrawn their plans to attend. Each cancellation message referenced family conflict or complicated family dynamics, but provided no specific details. Caroline and I were confused and concerned. I called my Aunt Susan to ask what was happening, but she seemed uncomfortable and evasive. Terrence: "I think there are some family issues that need to be worked out before the wedding," she said. "Maybe you should talk to your parents about resolving things." "What family issues?" I asked. "I thought we were working toward a solution." "I don't want to get in the middle of it," she replied quickly. "But there are some things being said about the wedding that are concerning." She hung up before I could ask for clarification, leaving me more confused than ever. The cancellations continued throughout the week. Friends from high school, college classmates, and family friends all began withdrawing their attendance. Our guest list dropped from 80 people to 60, then to 50. Caroline suggested that we call one of my college friends who had canceled to get more information. When I reached Tom, his explanation was disturbing. "Dude, I got this message on Facebook about some drama with your wedding," he said. "Someone said there were problems with the venue, that you and Caroline were having money issues, and that the whole thing might get canceled anyway. I figured it was better not to get involved." "What message? Who sent you a message?" "I don't know, it was from someone named Jennifer Roberts, but I don't think I know her. She said she was family and was trying to let people know about the situation." My blood ran cold. Jennifer Roberts was my mother's maiden name. I asked Tom to send me screenshots of the message, and what I saw made my hands shake with anger. The Facebook message was expertly crafted to sound concerned and helpful, while spreading doubt and confusion about our wedding. It mentioned financial difficulties, venue problems, and family drama without making any direct accusations. It suggested that guests might want to wait before making travel arrangements, because the situation was still developing. Caroline and I spent that evening calling other guests who had canceled, and we discovered a coordinated campaign of misinformation spreading across social media. Multiple fake accounts using variations of family names were contacting our guests through Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn. My best friend Marcus, who works in IT security, offered to help investigate. What he found over the next 24 hours revealed the scope of my parents' sabotage efforts. "Terrence, this is bad," Marcus said, showing me his laptop screen. "These accounts were all created within the past 2 weeks, and they're all being managed from the same IP address. Someone is running a sophisticated disinformation campaign against your wedding." The fake accounts had posted rumors about Carolyn being unfaithful, about me having financial problems, and asking guests for money, about the wedding venue being changed multiple times due to family drama, and about me forcing my elderly grandparents into an uncomfortable situation. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to another screen. "They've created fake Instagram stories that make it look like Caroline posted about relationship problems. They're using photos from her real account and adding fake captions." The level of deception was breathtaking. My parents had spent weeks creating elaborate lies designed to isolate us from our support system and destroy our wedding celebration. They had impersonated family members, created false social media content, and manipulated dozens of people into believing that our marriage was a mistake. Caroline cried when we showed her the fake Instagram posts using her photos. "How could they do this? How could anyone be this cruel?" I held her while she cried, my own heart breaking at the realization that my parents valued their pride more than my happiness. They were willing to hurt an innocent woman, manipulate extended family, and destroy relationships just to punish me for not following their wishes. That night, Harold and Dorothy came to our house after I called them about the situation. My grandfather's face was grim as we shared the evidence Marcus had gathered. "Son, I've seen a lot of human behavior in my 76 years." Harold said, "But I've never seen parents deliberately sabotage their child's happiness like this." Dorothy held Caroline's hand and spoke with quiet fury. "That anyone would use our names and our age to spread lies is despicable. We are not uncomfortable with walking you down that aisle, Terrence. We are proud and honored." As we sat in our living room that night, surrounded by printed screenshots and evidence of betrayal, I realized that my parents had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. This was not about wedding traditions or hurt feelings. This was about cruelty manipulation and a willingness to destroy relationships to maintain control. "What are we going to do?" Caroline asked. I looked at Marcus's evidence, at my grandparents' supportive faces, and at Caroline's tear-stained cheeks. "We're going to fight back," I said. "They want to play games with our wedding. Then they're going to learn that I'm not the pushover they think I am." But I had no idea how deep this betrayal actually went or how much worse things were about to become. 1 week before our wedding, our guest list had dropped to 30 people from the original 80. Our photographer called to confirm details and mentioned that someone claiming to be the groom had contacted her about canceling the service. Our caterer received a similar call. Even our DJ got a message saying the wedding was postponed indefinitely. Caroline spent her days calling vendors to confirm that our contracts were still valid, while I worked with Marcus to document the ongoing harassment. The stress was taking a visible toll on both of us. Caroline had lost weight and was having trouble sleeping. I found myself checking my phone obsessively, waiting for the next crisis or cancellation. During this chaos, something happened that would reveal the true depth of my parents' deception. Harold called me on Tuesday morning, his voice shaky and concerned. "Terrence, I hate to bother you with this right now, but I need to ask you something about my bank account." "Of course, Grandpa, what's wrong?" "Dorothy and I were reviewing our monthly bank statement, and there are some withdrawals that we don't remember making. Large withdrawals. I'm wondering if maybe you know something about them." My chest tightened. "What kind of withdrawals?" 3 different transactions over the past 3 months, $5,000 each time. The bank statement shows they were electronic transfers, but Dorothy and I never set up anything like that. I immediately drove to their house with Caroline and Marcus. Harold showed us his bank statements, and what we saw made my blood boil. $15,000 had been transferred from my grandparents' savings account to an account I didn't recognize. "Grandpa, you need to call the bank immediately," I said. "Someone has stolen money from your account." Marcus asked to see Harold's computer and discovered that someone had accessed his online banking account using saved passwords. The electronic transfers had been authorized using Harold's login credentials, but the timing of the transfers coincided perfectly with the period when my parents had been escalating their wedding sabotage. "This is sophisticated," Marcus said, examining the computer's browsing history. "Whoever did this knew Harold's banking information and had access to his email account for confirmation messages." A terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. 6 months earlier, my mother had offered to help Harold and Dorothy set up online banking because they were having trouble with the new computer Dorothy had bought them. She had spent an entire afternoon at their house setting up accounts and showing them how to check their balances electronically. "Grandpa, did Mom help you set up this online banking account?" I asked. "Yes, she did. She was so patient with us. She even wrote down the password so we wouldn't forget them." My worst fears were confirmed when Marcus traced the destination account for the stolen money. The transfers had gone to an account in my father's name, an account that had been opened just 4 months ago. "Terrence, your parents have been stealing from your grandparents," Marcus said quietly. "This is elder financial abuse." Caroline gasped. Dorothy started crying. Harold sat in his favorite chair looking confused and betrayed. The people he had trusted with his financial information had stolen $15,000 from his retirement savings. But Marcus wasn't done with his investigation. "There's more. I found email records that show coordination between the bank transfers and the wedding sabotage. Look at this." He showed us email records from the fake accounts my parents had created. The timeline revealed that they had begun stealing money from Harold and Dorothy to fund Amanda's wedding expenses. And when I announced my engagement, they panicked about being discovered. The wedding sabotage wasn't just about punishment or control. It was about covering up their financial crimes. They're destroying your wedding to hide the fact that they've been robbing your grandparents, Marcus explained. If your wedding gets canceled and you don't spend time with Harold and Dorothy going over wedding expenses, they might not notice the missing money for months. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. My parents had stolen from the two people who had shown me the most love in my life, then tried to destroy my relationship with those same people to cover their tracks. They had manipulated family members, created elaborate lies, and caused emotional trauma to dozens of people, all to hide their theft. Caroline was furious. "We have to call the police immediately." Harold, despite being the victim of this crime, was hesitant. "He's still my son. Dorothy and I don't want to send him to jail." "Grandpa, what they did to you is a felony," I said gently. Elder financial abuse is a serious crime. And they're not just stealing money. They're stealing your security, your peace of mind, and your dignity. Dorothy wiped her tears and spoke with surprising strength. "Harold, if we don't stop them, they'll do this to other elderly people. And look what they're doing to Terrence and Caroline. This has to end." We spent the next 2 hours calling the bank's fraud department and filing a police report. Detective Thompson, a specialist in elder abuse cases, reviewed our evidence and confirmed that we had grounds for criminal charges. "This is one of the more sophisticated elder abuse schemes I've seen," she said. "The coordination between the financial theft and the social media harassment shows premeditation and planning." As we left the police station, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that justice would finally be served, but sadness that it had come to this. My parents had chosen greed and cruelty over love and family, and now they would face the consequences. But first we had a wedding to save. That evening, our attorney Stephen reviewed all the evidence we had gathered. The financial theft, the social media harassment, the vendor interference, and the defamation campaign created multiple grounds for both criminal charges and civil lawsuits. "You have an extremely strong case," Stephen said. "But more importantly, you have enough evidence to stop their behavior immediately and recover damages for what they've done to your wedding and your grandparents' finances." As Caroline and I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Mom and Dad are planning something for this weekend. I don't know what, but they've been making phone calls and seem really excited about something. Just thought you should know." For the first time in months, Amanda seemed to be showing genuine concern rather than criticism. I thanked her for the warning and wondered what final scheme my parents might be planning. I was about to find out that their cruelty had no bottom, and that their next move would finally give me the opportunity to fight back in a way that would expose them publicly for what they truly were. Detective Thompson called Thursday morning with news that would change everything. "Terrence, we've reviewed all your evidence, and we have enough for multiple felony charges against both of your parents. Elder financial abuse, identity theft, harassment, and computer fraud. We're ready to make arrests, but I want to coordinate with you about timing." Stephen had been working around the clock to prepare both criminal charges and civil lawsuits. "Your parents have committed crimes that carry serious prison time," he explained. "The elder abuse alone is a Class C felony with a minimum sentence of 2 years. Add the identity theft and harassment, and they're looking at significant jail time." Meanwhile, our wedding coordinator, Jessica, had been performing miracles to salvage our celebration. After I showed her the evidence of sabotage, she worked overtime to contact every guest who had canceled, providing them with documentation of the lies they had been told. "Terrence, I've been planning weddings for 15 years, and I have never seen anything like what your parents did," Jessica said. "But I have good news. 72 of your 80 original guests have confirmed they will be attending after learning the truth." The response from our friends and extended family was overwhelmingly supportive. Many guests were outraged when they realized they had been manipulated by fake social media accounts. Some offered to help with wedding expenses, others volunteered their services, and several family members publicly apologized for believing the lies. My Aunt Susan called to express her horror at what she had learned. "Terrence, I am so ashamed that I believed those messages without talking to you directly. Your mother manipulated all of us, and now I understand why you wanted your grandparents to walk you down the aisle. They're the ones who truly deserve that honor. As we prepared for what we hoped would be the final confrontation with my parents, Amanda made a phone call that provided crucial information about their next move. "Terrence, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "Mom and Dad are planning to crash your wedding. They've been calling Brandon's family and talking about how they're going to fix this family embarrassment at your ceremony. They think if they show up and cause enough of a scene, you'll have to back down and let them walk you down the aisle." She paused, and I could hear her crying. "There's something else. I found out where the money for my engagement party came from. It was from Grandpa Harold's account. Mom showed me the bank statements and said you had given them permission to borrow the money, but now I know that was a lie. They stole from Grandpa and Grandma to pay for my party." This revelation was the final piece of evidence we needed. My parents had not only stolen from my grandparents, but had also lied to Amanda about the source of the money. They had made her an unwitting accomplice in their financial crimes. "Amanda, are you willing to testify about what Mom told you regarding the money?" I asked. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm done protecting them. What they've done is unforgivable." That weekend, Amanda's engagement party was scheduled to take place at the country club, where Brandon's family held their membership. It would be a lavish affair with over 100 guests, including Brandon's wealthy parents and their influential friends. My parents had been planning this party for months, using it as an opportunity to elevate their social status and impress their future in-laws. Stephen and Detective Thompson agreed that the engagement party would provide the perfect opportunity to arrest my parents publicly in front of the people they were trying so hard to impress. The public nature of the arrest would also serve as protection for our wedding since my parents would be in jail and unable to carry out their threat to disrupt our ceremony. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather for an outdoor celebration. The country club had decorated their garden terrace with elegant lighting and fresh flowers. A jazz quartet played softly while guests sipped cocktails and admired the sunset over the golf course. My parents played their roles perfectly as proud parents of the bride-to-be. My mother wore an expensive dress that I suspected was purchased with stolen money. My father worked the crowd, shaking hands and making conversation with Brandon's family members. They both seemed completely confident in their social performance. Amanda looked beautiful, but tense. She knew what was coming and struggled to maintain her composure as she greeted guests and accepted congratulations. Brandon seemed oblivious to the undercurrents of tension focused on introducing his family to what he believed were his future in-laws. At 8:30, as the party reached its peak, I arrived with Detective Thompson, 2 uniformed police officers, and Patricia from the bank's fraud department. We walked through the country club's main entrance and directly onto the garden terrace where the party was taking place. The music stopped. Conversations halted. Every guest turned to stare at our unexpected arrival. "Robert and Jennifer Ellis," Detective Thompson called out in a clear professional voice. My parents, who had been standing near the champagne fountain, froze in place. My mother's face went white. My father looked around frantically as if searching for an escape route. "You're under arrest for elder financial abuse, identity theft, computer fraud, and harassment," Detective Thompson announced loud enough for everyone to hear. The uniformed officers stepped forward with handcuffs as Patricia from the bank handed my parents copies of the financial evidence. Guests gasped and backed away as my mother began crying, and my father protested his innocence. "This is a mistake," my father said desperately. "Our son is trying to frame us because we wouldn't support his ridiculous wedding plans." Detective Thompson's response was calm and factual. "Sir, we have documented evidence of $15,000 stolen from Harold and Dorothy Ellis's bank account, along with evidence of identity theft and cyber harassment. You have the right to remain silent." Brandon's parents looked horrified. Their wealthy friends whispered among themselves while pulling out their phones to record the scene. The elegant engagement party had become a crime scene, and my parents' social aspirations crumbled in real time. Amanda stood frozen near the gift table, watching her future in-laws witness her parents being arrested for financial crimes. Brandon looked confused and embarrassed as his family members began asking pointed questions about the people he was planning to marry into. As the police led my parents away in handcuffs, my mother made one final desperate attempt to maintain control. "Terrence is having a breakdown," she called out to the remaining guests. "He's trying to destroy our family because he's jealous of his sister's success." Patricia from the bank stepped forward and addressed the crowd with professional authority. "Ma'am, we have bank records, computer evidence, and witness testimony documenting systematic theft from elderly family members. This is not a family dispute. These are serious criminal charges with substantial evidence." The garden terrace fell silent except for the sound of my mother's sobs as she was placed in the police car. Brandon's family gathered around him with expressions ranging from concern to disgust. Several guests left immediately, apparently uncomfortable with being associated with a criminal investigation. Amanda approached me with tears streaming down her face. "Terrence, I am so sorry. I had no idea how bad this was." "I know," I said, hugging her gently. "You're not responsible for their choices." As we left the country club, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness that my family had destroyed itself through greed and cruelty, but relief that the truth was finally exposed, and that Harold and Dorothy would get justice. Most importantly, our wedding was safe. My parents were in jail and would be unable to carry out their threats to disrupt our ceremony. For the first time in months, Caroline and I could focus on celebrating our love instead of defending ourselves from attack. The next morning brought news that would complete our vindication and set the stage for the peaceful wedding we had always dreamed of having. Sunday morning's newspaper featured a front-page article about the arrest with the headline, "Local couple arrested for elder abuse at country club party." The story detailed the financial crimes and the wedding sabotage, painting a picture of systematic manipulation and greed that shocked our entire community. The legal proceedings moved quickly. With overwhelming evidence and multiple witnesses, my parents had little choice but to accept plea bargains that included prison time, full restitution to Harold and Dorothy, and restraining orders preventing them from contacting our family. Judge Patricia Williams presided over their sentencing hearing 3 days before our wedding. In her remarks, she highlighted the particularly cruel nature of their crimes. The defendants systematically stole from elderly family members who trusted them, then orchestrated an elaborate campaign of lies and harassment to cover their tracks, she said. They showed no remorse for their actions and continued lying even after being confronted with evidence. This case represents a profound betrayal of family trust and human decency. My parents received 2-year prison sentences plus 3 years of probation. They were ordered to pay full restitution to Harold and Dorothy, plus additional damages for emotional distress. They also faced the loss of their professional licenses and the forfeiture of assets used in the commission of their crimes. The community response was swift and decisive. My father's insurance company terminated his employment immediately. My mother's real estate agency publicly distanced itself from her actions and revoked her license. Several clients filed complaints with professional licensing boards, ensuring that neither parent would be able to work in their chosen fields again. But the most significant consequence was the impact on Amanda's relationship with Brandon. The public nature of the arrest, combined with the criminal charges and media coverage, created an impossible situation for Brandon's wealthy family. Brandon's father, a prominent businessman who valued reputation above all else, delivered an ultimatum Amanda could choose between her relationship with Brandon and any connection to her criminal parents. She could not have both. The pressure from Brandon's family, combined with Amanda's own horror at learning the full extent of our parents' crimes, led to a decision that surprised everyone. On Tuesday morning, Amanda called a press conference at the same country club where her parents had been arrested. Standing beside Brandon but apart from him, she made a statement that showed remarkable courage and growth. "I want to publicly apologize to my grandfather and grandmother Harold and Dorothy Ellis, who were victims of financial abuse by my parents." She began, her voice shaking but determined. "I also want to apologize to my brother Terrence and his fiancée Caroline, who were subjected to harassment and lies designed to destroy their wedding celebration." She paused to compose herself before continuing. "I have learned that my engagement party was funded by money stolen from my grandparents' retirement savings. I cannot in good conscience continue a relationship that was built on criminal activity and family betrayal." Amanda then announced that she was ending her engagement to Brandon and would be testifying against our parents in any future legal proceedings. She also pledged to work toward making amends with the family members who had been hurt by our parents' actions. Brandon's statement was brief and focused on protecting his family's reputation. While I have great respect for Amanda as a person, the recent revelations about her family background make it impossible for us to move forward with our marriage plans. The media coverage of Amanda's press conference was extensive and largely sympathetic. She was portrayed as a victim who had found the courage to do the right thing despite significant personal cost. Several news outlets praised her decision to prioritize integrity over social status. Meanwhile, Harold and Dorothy were experiencing a remarkable transformation. The stress of being crime victims had initially taken a toll on their health and spirits, but the outpouring of community support and the return of their stolen money had energized them in unexpected ways. "I feel like we've been given a second chance," Dorothy told me during a phone call. "All our friends and neighbors have been so kind, and knowing that justice was served has lifted a weight off our shoulders." Harold was equally positive. "Son, I'm proud of you for standing up to bullies, even when those bullies were your own parents. You showed real character, and you protected the people who couldn't protect themselves." The community's response to our situation was overwhelmingly supportive. Our church offered to provide flowers for the wedding at no cost. Local businesses volunteered services ranging from photography to transportation. Even people we didn't know well expressed admiration for our decision to seek justice rather than accept family abuse. Carolyn's family, who had been watching these events unfold with concern and amazement, embraced me fully as their future son-in-law. Her parents offered to help with any remaining wedding expenses and promised to welcome me into their family with open arms. "Terrence, you've shown us what integrity looks like under pressure," Caroline's father said. "We couldn't be happier that our daughter is marrying someone with such strong character." As our wedding day approached, the final details fell into place beautifully. Our guest list was restored, and even expanded as people who had originally declined due to distance or scheduling conflicts made special efforts to attend after learning about our story. Jessica, our wedding coordinator, worked miracles to ensure every detail was perfect. The vendors who had been contacted with fake cancellation requests were eager to provide exceptional service as a way of making up for the confusion they had experienced. Most importantly, Harold and Dorothy were thriving. They had purchased new outfits for the wedding and spent hours discussing their honor of walking me down the aisle. Dorothy had even visited a salon to have her hair professionally styled for the occasion. "We want to look our best when we walk our grandson to his bride," she said with pride that brought tears to my eyes. The night before our wedding, Caroline and I sat in our living room surrounded by wedding presents, cards from well-wishers, and flowers from people who wanted to show their support. After months of stress, conflict, and heartbreak, we were finally able to focus on the joy of our upcoming marriage. "Do you think we'll ever hear from your parents again?" Caroline asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "But I know that we'll be okay regardless. We've learned who our real family is, and we've learned that we can stand up for ourselves when we need to." As I looked around our home and thought about the people who would be celebrating with us the next day, I realized that our wedding had become something much more meaningful than we had originally planned. It had become a celebration of justice, integrity, and the triumph of love over manipulation. The next morning would bring the wedding day we had dreamed of, surrounded by people who truly loved and supported us, with the two people who had shown me unconditional love my entire life, walking me toward my future. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, with temperatures in the mid-70s and a gentle breeze that made the October air feel perfect for an outdoor ceremony. I woke up feeling more peaceful than I had in months, knowing that the chaos and conflict were behind us, and that today would be purely about love and celebration. Harold and Dorothy arrived at the venue early, both dressed in elegant navy blue outfits that Dorothy had carefully coordinated. Harold wore a new suit with a silver tie that brought out his eyes, while Dorothy looked radiant in a knee-length dress with delicate beadwork that caught the morning sunlight. They both moved with an energy and purpose that made them seem years younger than their true ages. "Grandson, are you ready for this?" Harold asked, adjusting his tie with hands that were steady, despite his 76 years. "I've been ready my whole life, Grandpa," I replied, meaning every word. The venue had been transformed into something magical. White chairs arranged in perfect rows faced an archway covered in climbing roses and ivy. String lights hung between oak trees created a canopy of warm light over the ceremony space. The reception area featured round tables with centerpieces of sunflowers and autumn leaves, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and welcoming. Our vendors had exceeded every expectation. The photographer captured beautiful images of the venue preparation and the early arrival of guests. The caterer provided appetizers and beverages that guests praised throughout the day. Even our DJ, who had been confused by the fake cancellation calls, was determined to provide music that would make our celebration unforgettable. Guests began arriving an hour before the ceremony, and I watched from a window in the venue's preparation room as people I cared about filled the chairs. Carolyn's family occupied the first few rows on one side, their faces bright with anticipation and joy. My extended family members, who had been manipulated by my parents' lies, sat prominently in the front sections, making it clear that they were there to support us wholeheartedly. Marcus arrived wearing his best suit and carrying the rings we had entrusted to him as best man. Amanda sat in the third row, having driven 4 hours to attend, despite the awkwardness of her recent breakup and our parents' imprisonment. She had called the night before to ask if her presence would be welcome, and I had assured her that she was still my sister and always would be. Carolyn looked breathtakingly beautiful in her wedding dress, a classic design with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that moved gracefully as she walked. Her smile was radiant as she greeted guests and received congratulations from friends and family members. The stress and worry of the past months had disappeared, replaced by pure joy and excitement about our future together. At exactly 4 o'clock, the string quartet began playing the processional music we had chosen months earlier. The guests rose and turned toward the back of the ceremony space, where Harold and Dorothy flanked me on either side. Walking down the aisle with my grandparents was the most emotionally powerful moment of my life. Harold's steady presence on my left side provided strength and stability, while Dorothy's gentle smile on my right side radiated love and approval. With each step toward Caroline, I felt the weight of my parents' rejection lifting and being replaced by the overwhelming support of people who truly cared about my happiness. The guests' faces reflected genuine joy and emotional connection as they witnessed this unconventional but meaningful approach to the traditional processional. Several people wiped away tears, and I heard whispered comments about how beautiful and right the moment felt. When we reached the front of the ceremony space, Harold and Dorothy each hugged me tightly before taking their seats in the front row. Caroline joined me beneath the rose archway, her eyes sparkling with tears of happiness. Our officiant, Pastor Williams, began the ceremony with words that acknowledged the unique circumstances that had brought us to this moment. Today, We celebrate not just the union of Terence and Caroline, but the triumph of love, truth, and family loyalty over manipulation and selfishness. The vows we had written reflected our journey through the past months. Caroline promised to stand by me through family conflicts and difficult decisions, while I vowed to prioritize our relationship and the people who truly supported us over obligation to those who sought to control us. When Pastor Williams asked who was giving Caroline away, her father stepped forward with pride. When he asked who was giving me away, both Harold and Dorothy stood together. "We do," Dorothy said clearly, her voice carrying across the entire ceremony space. "With love, pride, and complete confidence in the man Terence has become." The exchange of rings was witnessed by 78 people who had chosen to celebrate with us, despite the family drama and social media manipulation they had experienced. Their presence was a testament to the power of truth over lies and authentic relationships over superficial obligations. As Pastor Williams pronounced us husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause and cheers that seemed to go on forever. Caroline and I kissed while being showered with rose petals thrown by children from both sides of our families. The reception that followed was everything we had dreamed it would be. Dinner was served on schedule with no vendor complications or last-minute cancellations. The speeches included heartfelt words from Harold about watching me grow into a man of integrity, from Caroline's father about gaining a son he was proud to welcome into their family, and from Marcus about friendship that survives even the most challenging circumstances. Amanda's speech surprised everyone, including me. She stood with visible nervousness and spoke about learning the difference between family relationships based on fear and control versus those built on love and respect. She apologized publicly for her role in supporting our parents' behavior and promised to work toward becoming the sister I deserved. The evening included dancing laughter and conversations that strengthened relationships rather than straining them. Guests told us repeatedly that our wedding was one of the most meaningful and joyful celebrations they had ever attended. As the night wound down, Harold and Dorothy approached Caroline and me on the dance floor. Dorothy handed me a small wrapped package. "This is from both of us," she said. "We wanted you to have something to remember this day, and what it means about the importance of choosing family based on love rather than obligation." Inside the package was a wooden picture frame that Harold had handcrafted in his workshop. The wood was polished to a warm glow, and carved along the bottom edge were the words, "Family is chosen with the heart." "Grandpa, it's perfect," I said, hugging them both. As Caroline and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, we were surrounded by well-wishers who expressed hopes for our future and gratitude for the example we had set by standing up for what was right. 3 months later, we received word that our story had inspired changes in local laws regarding elder financial abuse and family harassment. A foundation was established to help other families dealing with similar situations, and several people contacted us to share their own stories of choosing authentic relationships over toxic family obligations. Harold and Dorothy's stolen money was fully recovered, and they used part of it to take their first vacation in 20 years, a cruise to Alaska that they had always dreamed about taking. They sent us pictures from every port, looking happy and adventurous as they explored new places together. Amanda began therapy to understand her role in our family's dysfunction and slowly began building a healthier relationship with us based on mutual respect rather than shared trauma. She found a job that she loved and started dating someone who valued her integrity over her family connections. Caroline and I bought a larger house with a guest room specifically designed for Harold and Dorothy to visit whenever they wanted. We established traditions of our own based on inclusion, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Most importantly, we learned that family is not defined by biology or obligation, but by love, support, and the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. The people who walked me down the aisle that day had earned that honor through decades of unconditional love and consistent presence in my life. Our marriage has thrived because it was built on a foundation of truth, mutual respect, and the support of people who genuinely wanted us to succeed. We've faced challenges together, made decisions based on our values rather than external pressure, and created a life that reflects our commitment to treating each other and our extended family with dignity and love. The wedding day that my parents tried to destroy became the most meaningful celebration of my life, not despite the conflict we had endured, but because of how that conflict revealed the true character of the people around us. Walking down the aisle with Harold and Dorothy was not just about honoring them, but about publicly choosing love over manipulation, integrity over convenience, and authentic relationships over superficial obligations. Sometimes the most important decisions in life require us to break away from expectations and forge our own path toward happiness and fulfillment. Our wedding day proved that when we have the courage to stand up for our values and surround ourselves with people who truly care about our well-being, we can create celebrations and relationships that are more meaningful than anything we could have achieved by simply following tradition or giving in to pressure. Now I want to ask you something that connects to this whole experience. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and what you knew was right for your own life? How did you handle the pressure? And what did you learn about the difference between obligatory relationships and authentic love? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I believe many of us have faced similar challenges, even if the circumstances were different. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of your own experiences with difficult family dynamics, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and building the life you deserve. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being and surround themselves with people who truly support their happiness. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of this community where we can share experiences and support each other through life's challenges. I hope your own journey leads you to relationships built on love, respect, and genuine care, and that you always have the courage to choose authenticity over obligation.